Hello and welcome to today's Public Works and Finance Committee meeting. It is August 9th. I am joined today by Councilors Brandy Sullivan and Art Bedke. We have 3 items on our agenda today, the start of which is the approval of the July 26th Public Work Finance Committee minutes.
Look good to me.
I was not here, but it makes sense.
Perfect. All right, so our next item is the disbursement report for July 2021, and for that we have Finance Director Sarah Banks.
Good afternoon. In looking at the accounts payable report for month ending July 31st, 2021, total expenditures came to $4,532,871.31. There's about 6 payments that I would like to point out. The first one, we had a payment for a sewer rebuild on their headworks screen. This is a payment number 2 in the amount of $118,803.59. We had our Whitcomb 911 dispatch services for months July through September 2021 in the amount of $157,143.75. We had a payment for the South Lift Station Force Main in the amount of $339,811.20. 3rd Street Safety Improvement Phase 1 payment for $280,474. And then for our Police Services Station construction payment application number 13 for $714,634.99.
Any questions about that?
Nothing unanticipated there.
Agreed.
All right.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sarah. That brings us to our last item, which is the American Rescue Plan Act National Endowment for the Arts Grant. And with us for that, we have Elisa Anderson and Megan Cherry.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So before you today, we have a unique opportunity that has presented itself through the unfortunate COVID situation that we've been experiencing over the last year and a half. It seems like, has it been that long?
It's been that long.
And so under the National Endowment of the Arts, they have brought forth a program that really is focused on helping arts organizations and those who are employed through the arts or their businesses are producing their art and selling it, those types of things. So really we're looking at supporting the community and also arts organizations. And so Megan and Jen have put together an outline of what they're looking at doing. I'll just go ahead and let Megan do that, but I just wanted to say that there are 3 choices of amounts you can apply for. So it's either $50, $100, or $150. And we're targeted at the 100,000 mark this time. And it's giving us a window of submittal period. So we had to log into grants.gov to even get the questions. It's kind of a unique opportunity. But I think this is, it's really good to see that, we're seeing recovery funding that's not just focused on infrastructure, even though I love infrastructure. But this is an opportunity to also look at the arts and culture in our community. So I'm going to talk about her focus in the application.
Thank you. So yeah, this is a fairly, anybody who's written a grant knows this is a really unique opportunity. General operating support doesn't usually come through this type of program. Most of the grant funding is project-based. And the intent of the program really truly is to keep arts workers in their offices, to keep people working, to keep organizations afloat. I did attend a session with Mike Simpson about how this is, the writing challenges to make utilities exciting in the grant application. In our particular case, we're proposing to offset the costs of existing salary for the arts administrative specialist to support temporary collection artist honoraria. This is something that the NEA and the ICA are both in very clear alignment on the value value of paying artists for the work that they do for communities. And so this is really aligned with their goals. And then this proposal also includes a pilot to evaluate an exhibitions and collections specialist. This would be obviously a one-time revenue, and so limited expense on the part of the city to support essentially public art programming and maintenance. We do have, as of this year, a maintenance plan for our public art collection, but have not been able to put that plan into action. We're in a good place with it to know what we need to do, but we have not found the staffing capacity to make that happen. So this would allow us to explore that as an approach to maintenance operations and also to support accessions.
As an ARPA program, this doesn't require any match, so it's a good deal. The application was submitted to me for approval. I agree with the first two parts of the program. I talked to Jen on Thursday about the collection specialist. That is something that there may be other alternatives to do. That position, this isn't typically the way that we fund positions. So even as pilot positions, it typically goes through a different process. So I talked to Jen about some different alternatives, perhaps getting a consultant involved, whether we put somebody on for a period of time, whether that can be worked into our facilities maintenance. There are all kinds of other things to do rather than just, so we'll talk about that before it comes to council next Monday, but I don't know that it's in the city's best interest to request funding for a position until we have all that other work done. So don't disagree with the amount of the funding. It can certainly be, that may be one alternative. There may be several others that we talked about, so we'll continue to work on that. But as far as the application and such, I approve that it go forward just because it makes sense. It's a good program and shouldn't be a big deal.
So is this an all or nothing type of grant, or do they come back and say, oh, we'll do some adjustment?
You know, it doesn't tell us that. I think because it says certain amounts and it's a federal grant, I think you have to justify the amount you're asking for, and if you can't, then there's usually not negotiating. If it was a state agency, I would say yes, but these awards are usually, they've got a lot to process, so they're pretty strategic in how they streamline everything.
So we essentially get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Gotcha.
That segues nicely into my question about why we chose the amount that we did.
I haven't seen Jen and Megan's write-up yet, so I will still be in the process of looking at the criteria and evaluating that. I think in the CCSR, I put up to an amount not to exceed 100,000. However, I'll need a little bit more time to review their requests before I could answer that question sufficiently. But what I normally do, I can't say it's a specific technique, it's a gut feeling. I'll look at the eligibility criteria and then look at the overall budget based upon what we're requesting, look at some percentages, and really see if I feel like our application can support an amount of that request. So it's a few things that, as a grant writer, I kind of run my playwright on it, and we'll look at it.
But the program allows up to 150,000, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that if the specialist position doesn't look like it's going to be able to make it due to its ongoing nature on one-time funds, do we still have time to ramp things down to maybe 50,000 or something if that doesn't go in the next week before we get to council?
I think that the point is definitely on that, the exhibitions and collections specialist position is that it would not be an ongoing position, that it would be linked specifically to those grant funds, that it's not something that council is constrained to creating a permanent position, that when it's advertised, it will be advertised as
position.
Sorry, if it were to be advertised, it would be advertised as a temporary position.
So maybe
That
like
helps
a
a lot.
project base, like a contract to complete this.
I wouldn't say it would be a part-time employee. as opposed to a contract-based employee. And part of this that is part of the intent of this grant program, is to allow organizations to either support existing personnel or to create new jobs.
So, clearly, being a governmental agency, it can work. Otherwise, you wouldn't be proposing applying for it. It doesn't have to be a private organization. of
Correct, they have a
artists.
separate program
Okay.
for private organizations, yeah.
And then, would there be, I mean, it presumably could cover the director's salary, is that correct? So, I would almost say,
It's a,
is there a reason not to go for the 150? It seems like with the salaries that we already have, would justify that, but.
Without seeing the narrative that is not been turned into me yet, my gut feeling, based upon the criteria and the information written, there's a certain amount of money, there's only going to be 800 awards. And so, my concept on this one would be, we may be better to ask for less based upon the amount of our overall budget for the art department. Because you don't want to ask for 3/4 of your annual budget, because they do ask to look at the entire budget. So you want to be conservative in your request. And that's the approach I take with a lot of our applications, and it has worked for me.
Well, you know strategy best amongst all of us.
and, one thing that's kind of tricky, we run into this with the ICA, public programs and the arts application every year as well, that we are sharing the arts budget, but what that doesn't reflect accurately is how we fit into the broader scope of the city budget. So if we were a nonprofit arts organization, we would be paying for legal services, for finance, for bookkeeping, for CPAs. We would be paying for all kinds of things that we're fortunate to have in-house here at the city. So that's one thing that's a little bit tricky about it. That said, this program they explicitly state that it is aimed at small and mid-sized budgets. They're not looking to send $150,000 to the Guggenheim. I'm on record saying that. But it is really truly, and they are also targeting rural arts organizations. So in a lot of ways, that makes our grant proposal a really strong candidate for the program.
Yeah,
It
I know
also
you guys
is-
have been working on this, well, at least during my tenure as liaison with the Arts Commission. You guys have been working on this, trying to get the collections under control and properly curated and cared for. And so from my point of view, this fits nicely into that whole realm of trying to take care of what we've got, as well as encourage artists to produce more stuff for the heart of the arts here in Moscow.
Agreed. And I trust you all on what you think is going to be the most appropriate ask, especially knowing that it's going to be a yes or no, black and white decision. I did have one follow-up question. So is the idea kind of, and you touched on this, but could someone get a program started, and then if that's a big capacity investment, could existing staff then potentially kind of take the baton? Do you think that would be possible, or is it something that's an ongoing capacity demand?
For maintenance, you mean?
For the, and specifically that position?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be something where that position would work out the kinks of, we essentially have we have a template, a plan for here's what needs to happen every year. And so they would be working out those kinks, streamlining that process, updating that plan accordingly. And, and really it truly is a process of evaluating what works and how much staff capacity that's going to take.
Great. That's a helpful explanation. Thank you. I feel good about,
Yeah.
did you have
Yeah,
something, Brandy?
I see too that it says a grant period of up to 2 years is allowed, so
It
Sounds
would
like-
start January 1,
but would
2022.
you plan to utilize it in 1 year, or?
spread it over a 2-year period?
We would plan to have the first expenditure from those funds in April of '22, and then and then we would end up at September 30 of 2023.
Oh, okay. So you would,
And
yeah.
Normally, these programs are a reimbursement type grant. They don't provide the money up front, so you have to submit a reimbursement request, either showing your hard cost expenditures with wages. They have specific forms that you have to fill out, and certifications. I don't ever know until we receive an award exactly what the supporting documentation will be that they require, so.
Great, thank you both. Anybody else have any questions?
Oh,
or
rock
anything
on with
else?
it.
Yeah.
Apply for that
Very
grant.
exciting.
Thank you for your time
so
today.
much. Are we thinking consent agenda for this item?
Likely not, since it may change when you see it again.
That's a good point. All right, regular agenda it is. Are there any reports, Gary? Thank you.
Staff has nothing, thank you.
All right, we ready to adjourn?
Yep.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.